Okay, Boker Tov. Today's Daf Yomi is Yevamos Daf Samachtas. We're really starting in the middle of matters. We're finishing the sugya from yesterday. Where what have we established in yesterday's sugya? Yesterday's sugya we established that when there was a pasuk says we're on 69a, 10 lines from the top. Yesterday's sugya we established that when the verse says Ki siyeh ish zar, we learn from here that anybody that if there was a union which was prohibited by a regular prohibition, that even though it's just a regular prohibition, the marriage is considered valid. That's going to disqualify a woman from eating the truma, and also is going to disqualify her from marrying a Kohen. And that's when it says kisiyah, that it says kisiyah le'ishzar, from the word siyah, to be, we say it means that if there's a vow of marriage. And then there's a verse that says, it says kisiyah le'ishzar, and then if it says kisiyah almana grusha, there's a verse that we read in yesterday's parasha, it says when a woman will be a widow or divorcee, and then she marries the Kohen Gadol, or if she's divorced, she marries a regular Kohen, that's prohibited. And the rabbis yesterday learned out from this that even if there's a woman who's in a relationship where the penalty is kares, so that even though kiddushin, the marriage is not recognized, it also disqualifies the marriage. So we just have a few minutes, like a few lines to finish up the sugya from yesterday. So the Gemara now says, well, according to Rabbi Akiva, who we learned earlier, back on 10b in our tractate, that if it's any prohibition, like for example, even a divorcee to a Kohen, that the marriage is not valid, and so therefore the kedushin would not be valid. How does he learn these verses? So the Gemara says, Rabbi Akiva de Amar en kedushin tovsin b'chai v'laven. So what does Rabbi Akiva learn out from this verse? He learns out from this verse, kisiyah means kiti ba'el, that if a non-Kohen has relations, and the verse tells us that any relation that a person has which is prohibited disqualifies a woman from eating the truma, and also from marrying a Kohen, even if the relations were with a Canaanite slave. So the Gemara says, if that's the case, Almana Grusha Lamali. What do we learn out from the verses Almana Grusha? What do we learn out from the fact that it's a widow or divorcee? So the Gemara explains, Almana Lahachmir Olah, Grusha Lahakel Olah. So the verse Almana, the word Almana, is coming to be strict to tell us that if she has a seed, if she's a widow and she has a seed from her non-Kohen, she does not go back to her father's home to eat the truma. And the word grusha is being lahakol out, to tell us that even though she's divorced from an Israelite, she does not go back to her father's home. She is allowed to go back to her father's home and eat the truma. And the Gemara says that we need both cases. Almana, because if we just had the ruling about the almana, about the widow, I would say almana who the kilei zera, the widow, because she has no seed, she could eat from the truma. Mishum dechazil kahuna, because she could marry a regular kohen. Aval grusha, but a divorcee, dechazil kahuna, who's not able to marry a kohen. I might have said ema afagav deleisla zara loacha, even though she has no seed, she cannot eat from the truma. And so therefore you have to tell us that the divorcee, therefore we need to know that also a divorcee can eat the truma if she has no seed. So it's being lenient. V'iyashmin and grusha, and if we just had a case about a divorcee, I would say grusha who the ki islay zeraloacha, the case of the divorcee, because if she has seed, she cannot eat from the truma. Mishum delochazil kahuna, because she can't marry a kohen at all. Aval almana, but a widow, dechazil kahuna, a widow can marry a kohen. I might have said that a widow, even if she has, she can eat from the truma. So we're strict and we say the widow can't do it. The Gemara says, and I know this is confusing if you didn't do yesterday's daf, so this will just be a couple more lines and then we'll go on to the next topic. But the Gemara says, but maybe we're learning out from the words Bas Kohen Ki Siyeh Ishzar Nibala Lapasala. We might have said that when it says the words kisiyah ishzar, that it's coming to teach us that if you have a disqualifying relationship, you're disqualified from the truma, even if it's a case of machzir grushaso. Which what's a machzir grushaso? That if you divorce your wife marries somebody else, and then she divorces him, and you remarry her, that's a prohibition. And we might have thought that the verse is telling us that also you become disqualified from the truma from your father's home, when it's not the case. So how do we know that doesn't apply in a case of machzir grusha? So the Gemara says ish zar amarachmana. The Torah says kisiyela ish zar, which teaches us misha zar atzami ikara. The word zar means somebody who is foreign from her initially. Fuke hai comes to exclude this case. Lo zar atzami ikarahu. That initially she was allowed to be with him. Meaning to say she was initially allowed to be with him. Gemara says, if that's the case, halal the lav zar meikara. Well, if so, if that's the case, a halal who was somebody who was born disqualified from the kahuna, that is not considered an ish zar because he's allowed to marry anyone, so that he should also not disqualify her. Gemara says, no. The reason why we know a halal disqualified is because Amar Kra, the verse says, Lo yichalel zaro b'amav. That you're not allowed to marry, a woman is not allowed. We read this yesterday. It's all basically an exposition of yesterday's Torah portion that you're lo yichalel zaro b'amav. That it says in the verse that you should not impugn your seed. Makish zaro lo. We compare his seed to him. Mahu post sale, just like the Kohen Gadol who marries a widow is prohibited him, disqualifies her from eating the truma. Av zaro, so to his seed is nami post sale, also disqualifies a woman from eating the truma and marrying a Kohen if he has relations with her. The ema, maybe we can learn out that since the verse says ki siyeh mishas havaya, only from a betrothal to the halal will she become disqualified. Mara says no. Dumya to Kohen Gadol ba'almana. This qualification is like a Kohen Gadol with a widow. Ma Kohen Gadol ba'almana b'bia, just like the Kohen Gadol with the widow is with intercourse, he disqualifies her because it says v'lo yichalel zaro. Afai nami b'bia. Also, to here with the halal, it's also just with bia that he's going to disqualify her on its own. Gemara says ve'ema ad ika havaya bia. Maybe you need both. Maybe you need marriage and the intercourse. The Gemara says no. Dumya the Kohen Gadol ba'almana. No, it's similar to the case of the Kohen Gadol and the widow. Ma Kohen Gadol ba'almana b'bia l'chuda. Just like the Kohen Gadol disqualifies the widow from ever eating the truma and from marrying a Kohen just with the bia. Afai nami bia l'chuda. So too in this case also just with the halal, the bia itself is to disqualify, or with any of those who are psue posum to the or psue to the kahuna. So earlier, a little bit of a different topic here, but still along the same lines. The Gemara on 68a had listed the names of all those people who, these categories of people who are, if they're with a woman, they disqualify her from marrying a Kohen and from eating the truma with their bia. And the Gemara listed that in the Brisa. And then after the Gemara gives us that list in the Brisa, Rabbi Yossi and Shimon Gamliel, each of them came along and said general principles when these disqualifications take effect. And the Gemara is going to look at what are the differences and the distinctions between the three opinions: the opinion of the Tanna Kama, the opinion of Rabbi Yossi, and the opinion of Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. So, yeah, sure.
What is the effect of not being able to eat the truma?
The effect of not being able to. The question is, what's the effect of not being able to eat the truma? You can't eat the truma. So that's.
So is that like an economic loss? Is it a loss of status? Is it
everything? It's everything. If everybody else in her father's home can eat the truma and she's sitting there and she can't eat it, yeah, of course, it's a big loss. She can't have the wine, she can't have the bread, she can't have the oil, so it's a big loss, of course.
Is it I don't know what the word is. Is it embarrassing to her?
Well, I mean, the Talmud doesn't say if whether it's embarrassing to her, but we could speculate ourselves.
It lowers her status.
I'm sure it does. Yes, I'm sure it does. I mean, if everybody else around the table can eat it except for her, she's going to be feeling bad. So the Gemara, the Brisa said,
Rabbi, what is the penalty that's imposed on anyone who eats the truma who's not supposed to?
That's the penalty of somebody who eats a truma who's not supposed to. It's an excellent question. It is death from heaven, I believe. I could always need to check, but I believe it is death from heaven. It's a very severe penalty if you eat the truma when you're not supposed to. If you eat it accidentally, we read in yesterday's portion that you have to pay back a Kohen plus add 1/5. But if you ate it intentionally, I believe it is death from heaven. So that is the penalty, a very severe penalty. So thank you. So we could check that up, check me on that, because I am just saying it from memory, and my memory is terrible, even though we did yesterday in Pirkei Avos. In chapter 3, we learned that whoever forgets one thing from their learnings is mischayev b'nafsho. So it's a very severe penalty on such a person. So ironically, that's not good on my part either, but do the best we can. So
I
anyway,
just
we
didn't
learned.
think there was heaven. I was raised to believe that we make our heaven or hell here on earth and not
Okay,
elsewhere.
so we'll discuss that later. So the Gemara says, the Tanna Kama says that if somebody is 9 years old and 1 day, and they had relations with a person who is a convert from an Ammonite or Moabite, these are people you're not allowed to marry, the Torah says explicitly, or a Egyptian or an Edomite, or a Kuti, Nitin, Halal Mamzer, in all these cases, poslim, they disqualify the woman from eating the truma or from marrying a Kohen. So the Gemara says, so basically, if these people are 9 years old in 1 day and they're with this woman, they disqualify her. Rabbi Yossi adds on, Kol shezaro posel. Rabbi Yossi says anyone whose seed disqualifies posel disqualifies the woman. But Kol she'ein zaro posel pasul, and anyone whose seed is not disqualified, a no posel does not disqualify the woman. Gemara asks the question, Ma'ika ben Tanakama or Rabbi Yossi? What is Rabbi Yossi adding on to the Tanakama with his general principle? Because he says anybody whose seed is disqualified, he disqualifies the woman. If his seed is not disqualified, he does not disqualify the woman. The Gemara says, I'm Rabbi Yochanan, Mitzri Sheni Ve'edomi Sheni Ika Benayu. Because it says about the Egyptian that they cannot come in until the third generations. So therefore, let's say the difference between the Tanakama and Rabbi Yossi relates to a Mitzri who is the second generation, or an Edomite from the second generation. Because according to the Tanakama, any Mitzri or Edomi, since they're disqualified from coming into the community, they're going to disqualify the woman with their bia. And so therefore, even the second generation, they're going to disqualify. But according to Rabbi Yossi, only a first generation Mitzri or Edomite will be disqualifying, because their seed are also disqualified. But the second generation, their seed is kosher. So therefore, they're not going to disqualify the woman. And Ushneim lo lamdua el mikohen gadol b'almana. And Rabbi Yossi and Tanakama both derive as a source for their teaching a Kohen Gadol with a widow. Tanakama Savar, the Tanakama of the position, Ma Kohen Gadol b'almana, just like the high priest with the widow, Shebiato ba'avera, just like the high priest with the widow, that their bia is a sin, uposel, and it disqualifies her from eating the truma. Af hainami posel. So too, since this intercourse is prohibited, it will disqualify her from eating the truma. The Rabbi Yossi Savar Kohen Gadol. Rabbi Yossi's other position is like the Kohen Gadol. Ma Kohen Gadol shezaro pasul. Just like the Kohen Gadol is a situation where if he's with a widow, the seed is disqualified, uposel, and also disqualifies her from eating. Just like the Kohen Gadol is pasul, he makes his seed a halal, and also disqualifies a woman. Af kol shezaro pasul posel. So to anyone whose seed is pasul will disqualify. Fuki mitre sheni. This excludes the second generation Egyptian. The ein zaro pasul. His seed is not disqualified because it says banim asher yivaldu ahem. The third generation can enter. So that's a distinction between Rabbi Yossi and the Tanakama. What about Rabbi Shimon Gamliel? Because what did Rabbi Shimon Gamliel say in that price? Rabbi Shimon Gamliel said, Kol shatano se bito, atano se amanuto. Anyone who you can marry her daughter, you could also marry her widow. It's a strange expression. What does that mean? So Ma'ika bein Rabbi Yossi or Rabbi Shimon Gamliel. Again, what's the distinction between Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Shimon Gamliel? Amar Ua taught, so the difference between them is a convert from an Ammonite or Moabite. That's the difference between them. Meaning to say that Ammonite and Moabite are not allowed to marry into the community, but the female Ammonites and Moabites, we learned this from Ruth, are allowed to marry in. And here too, they also compare this to the high priest. with a widow. Rabbi Yossi is of the position, Ma Kohen Gadol Ba'amana, just like if a Kohen Gadol marries a widow, Shezaro Pasul, the seed is disqualified. Uposel, and will disqualify a woman if he is with her. Afkol Shezaro Pasul Posel. So to anyone whose seed is disqualified, will disqualify. Whereas Rashbag says, Ma Kohen Gadol Ba'amana Shekol Zaro Pasul Posel. Just like the Kohen Gadol with a widow, everyone whose seed is disqualified, it will disqualify. Afkol Shezaro Pasul Posel. So to anyone whose seed is disqualified, will disqualify. This comes to exclude Ammonite or Moabite because not all of their seeds are disqualified. The Amar, we learned this about Ruth. It says Ammoni v'lo Ammonit, Moavi v'lo Moabit. So there, a female Ammonite or Moabite can enter into the community. What's the reason? Because the reason what the Gemara discusses this in elsewhere in our tractate in Yevamos and also in Kedushin, because the prohibition for the Ammonites and Moabites is because they did not bring out bread and water when we were in the wilderness. But who's the one who goes out to the wilderness? Who goes out to bring the food? It would have been the men. So therefore, the women are not disqualified, and that's why Ruth was allowed to marry into the people. But anyway, that's why Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says if the one who had the relations with the woman was an Ammonite or Moabite convert, then their offspring is allowed to marry. Then they did not disqualify the woman from marrying the Kohen because their offspring will be allowed to marry into the community. Now we're up to the Mishnah on the bottom of 69a. Ha'ones v'amafata v'ashote. So let's say what's an ones? An ones is a man who violently assaults a woman, and a mefata against her will. A mefata is a man who seduces a woman prior to marriage. Shote is somebody who's not of sound mind, doesn't have agency. Low postlin. If they just have relations with a woman, they do not disqualify her. But yet that relations do not allow her to eat the truma. If he was a Kohen and he has either the seduction or the assault, that will not allow her to eat the truma. But let's say the person who does the assault or the seduction or is not of sound mind is a person who's not able to marry into the Jewish people, like for example, let's say a mom's there, then they will disqualify the woman. Kate said, the Gemara is going to give us all these examples. What are these examples? Yisrael Shabal Bas Kohen. Let's say there's an Israelite man who has relations with a daughter of a Kohen. So therefore, Tochal B'Truma, he doesn't disqualify her. Just from premarital relations, that's not going to be disqualifying her because she's allowed to marry an Israelite. Ibra, let's say she becomes pregnant from the Israel and she's a daughter of a Kohen. Well, Tochal B'Truma, she cannot eat the Truma in her father's home because we learned yesterday, we're on the top of 69b, a fetus disqualifies, but it does not allow you to eat from the truma, but it will disqualify you. So since she's a daughter of a Kohen and she's pregnant from a non-Kohen, we say it disqualifies her from eating the truma in her father's home. Let's say she loses the fetus, tochal, then she's allowed to eat the truma because she's no longer pregnant from a non-Israelite. Second case, Hayakohen Shabal Bat Israel.
The fetus
is lost? No, that doesn't matter. Kohen Shabal Bat Yisrael. Let's say there was a Kohen with a Israelite daughter, and they have the seduction or the onus of mafata. Lo tochal b'truma. That's not enough. She's not married to him yet, so she can't eat from the truma. Ibra, let's say she becomes pregnant for him. Lo tochal. She's not enough to allow her to eat the truma because she can only eat the truma in a circumstance where she has a child from him. Yalda, if she gives birth to a child from him, even though they're not married, tochal, she can eat from the truma. So the power of the son is greater than the father, because the father can only allow her to eat the truma if he had married her. But the son, even if he's born out of wedlock, can allow her to eat the truma. An Eved, a Canaanite slave, posel mishum bia, if he has relations with a woman, that will disqualify her from eating the truma or from marrying a Kohen. The Einon posel mishum zera, but he does not disqualify her on account of the seed that he has from her, that he has with her. Kate said, let's break it down. Ba'as Yisrael Kohen. Let's say you have the daughter of an Israelite who marries a Kohen, or Bas Kohen Israel, or a daughter of a Kohen who marries an Israelite. V'yaldei menu ben. They give birth to a son. And now this son goes ahead. The son of these two Jews, one Israelite, one a Kohen, goes and is with a Canaanite woman. V'yaldei menu ben, and they have a son. This son, since she's not Jewish, the son is not Jewish. He's considered a Canaanite slave. So Haisa Aim Aviv Bas Israel. So let's say the mother of his father was a Israelite, Kohen. We're not going to say she can eat the truma because she could only eat from the truma if she has a descendant from the Kohen, but the slave is not going to be considered a descendant. But it works the other way to also be a leniency, because if she was the daughter of a Kohen, Bas Kohen Israel, then we're going to say she can eat from the truma. Why can she eat from the truma? There, Bas Kohen Israel, tochal b'truma, because she could only eat from the truma if she doesn't have a descendant. And she can go back to her father's home. In this case, she's going back to her father's home, and so therefore she can eat from the truma because the slave is not considered a descendant. Next case, mamzer posel umachil. A mamzer, what's a mamzer? So there's a mamzer in the Talmud. There's a lot of different opinions about what make. There's 3 different opinions about what make a mamzer, but in this case, the mamzer will disqualify her from eating the truma. But mamzer will disqualify her, but also allow her to eat it. What's the scenario? Ketzad, Bas Yisrael Kohen. Let's say there's a daughter of an Israelite to a Kohen, or a Bas Kohen to Israel, or a daughter of a Kohen to Israel. We'll look at both scenarios. And so they give birth to a girl. And this girl goes, she marries a Canaanite slave, or an idolater. So this Jew with this Canaanite gives birth to a son. According to the Mishnah, we don't rule like that. We don't rule that the offspring of a Jewish woman and a non-Jewish man is a mamzer, but in the Mishnah, the opinion was that they were a mamzer. So now, so what does the mamzer do? If his mother's mother was a daughter of an Israelite to a Kohen, tochal b'truma, she can eat from the truma, because we're going to say that she has a descendant from a Kohen. Even though the descendant is a mamzer, that's still going to be considered a descendant. A mamzer descendant is still a descendant and will allow her to eat from the truma. But if it was a Bas Kohen Israel, but if she was a daughter of a Kohen to Israel, then mamzer will disqualify her from eating the truma because she can't go back to her father's home, because she can only go back to her father's home and eat the truma if she has no descendants. But she has a descendant, even though he's a mamzer, so she can't eat from the truma. Now, this is a great piece here. Kohen Gadol, the high priest himself. It's sometimes you could have a descendant who's a high priest, and it'll disqualify you from eating from the truma. Ketzad. So Bas Kohen Israel. Let's say you have the daughter of a Kohen to Israel. The Yolda Menu Bas. So the daughter of a Kohen marries a Jew, and they give birth to a girl. So now, what's happened to the daughter of a Kohen? She can't eat the truma anymore because she has a descendant from an Israelite, so she can't go back to her father's home and eat the truma. But now this girl goes, who's not a Kohen, not this daughter of a Kohen. She gives birth. She marries a Kohen. And now they give birth to a son. So the grandson of the original daughter of a Kohen is a Kohen, because her daughter, who was the daughter of an Israelite, married a Kohen. So their grandson is a Kohen.
But how is she allowed to marry a Kohen?
Why not? Why can't she marry a Kohen? She can marry anybody she wants. She's a perfectly good Jew. She's the daughter of a Kohen. She's the daughter of an Israelite and the daughter of a Kohen. So their daughter is a Jew who's just not a Kohen, and she marries a Kohen, and their son is a Kohen. Their son could be the Kohen Gadol. He's a perfectly good Kohen. He could stand and serve on the altar. And as a result of him, if his father dies, his mother has a descendant who's a Kohen. His mother has a descendant from a Kohen. She can eat the truma. But his grandmother now has a descendant from an Israelite. His grandmother cannot go back to her father's home anymore and eat the truma. And that's why the grandmother says, "Oy vay vay." This was the grandmother. She's sitting there. Everybody's saying, "Look, you should be so proud. Your grandson's a Kohen Gadol." And she says, "Oy vay vay, don't be like my grandson." Look at me, Kohen Gadol. She says, "Don't be like my grandson, the Kohen Gadol. Shu poslani min truma. He's disqualifying me from the truma." That this is, I think, the Mishnah's sense of humor. She's saying, don't be like my grandson, the Kohen Gadol. Because of him, now my husband, who's an Israelite, has a descendant, and so therefore I can't go back to my father's home and eat the truma anymore. Don't be like my grandson, the high priest. That's Rebbe's way of teaching us this law. You won't forget it. So the Gemara says, Tanino, we had a brayso that thought the following: the Tanu Rabbanan. Shotev ekatan. Let's say you have a person who's not of sound mind; they don't have agency, an insane or a minor. Shenasu nashim, they married women, umesu, and then they died. You trying to ask something, Jeff?
Yeah. When she married, when the Kohen's daughter married a Yisrael and had a daughter, at that point she was disqualified, right?
Yeah, but you're right. You're right. I skipped that point, but if that daughter would die, then she'd be allowed to go back to her father's home. But now, because of the grandson, she can't go back to her father's home.
Okay, so the daughter had it, but the daughter had a child.
Yeah, sharp, Jeff.
Right.
I skipped that step because in this purpose of time, but Jeff nailed it. Shkoyach. Okay, so now back to the brayso. We learned the shota v'katan, a minor and an insane. Shenasu nashim. If they marry women, umesu, and then these people who marry these women die. Nishoseim peturos min hachalitza min hayibam. Their offspring don't do yibam or chalitza. Why don't they do yibam or chalitza? Because we're not sure if it's a real marriage. So therefore, since we're not sure if it's a real marriage, so therefore they can't do yibam. And they're also exempt from chalitza because they really were never married, because since they don't have agency, the marriage was not binding. So now we look at the case from a Mishnah. If a Jew has relations with the Bas Kohen, she's allowed to eat the truma because she's not married. But if she's pregnant from him, lo tochal, she can't eat the truma. Gemara says, Kivan the Ibra lo tochal. So since if she's pregnant, she can't eat from the truma. If that's what we're saying, well, now we have to say something. Wow, why don't we should always be concerned? Maybe she's pregnant. The Tanan. Remember this case we had a couple of, maybe like a month ago? Milo Tanan, didn't we learn Mafrishinos in the case where there were where the two men married the two women and they accidentally mixed up their wives on the night of the wedding? Remember that case? We said Mafrishinos, some Gimel Chadashim, we immediately separate them for 3 months. Shema Mubarasin, but maybe they're pregnant, and so we want to make sure they're not pregnant. So therefore, every case we should say, if she had relations with this man, she shouldn't be allowed to go back to her father's home and eat the truma. We should make her separate for 3 months. We're more concerned about yichos, to make sure who the father is, than we are for truma, so we don't have this extra concern by truma. Mar says, but really, is that the case? Latanya. Let's say a person gives a woman a divorce. A man gives his wife a divorce and he says, you're divorced 1 hour prior to my death. Why would he want to do this? Let's say you can think of a million scenarios where it's advantageous for the woman to be divorced from the husband for all sorts of purposes, but they want to stay married. So he says, you're going to be divorced 1 hour prior to my death. Let's say she's going to get a lot more money in, let's say, divorce, then the taxes will kick into estate taxes. You can think of all scenarios. So he says, you're divorced 1 hour prior to my death. Well, then, we have to be concerned that he could die at any second. And so therefore, she's not allowed to eat the truma immediately. So she's going to be prohibited because we say, maybe now he's going to die. And so we see from here, out of a doubt, we prohibit her from eating the truma. So if that's the case, we should say the same thing. Out of a doubt that maybe she's pregnant, she shouldn't be allowed to eat the truma. When she was married, we're concerned that maybe she became pregnant. But if she just has premarital relations or out of marital relations, then we don't have to be concerned that she's going to be pregnant. We already said this in the Gemara that if the woman has lewd relations, she knew how to twist her body to prevent herself from becoming pregnant. But if she had marital relations, she would just try the opposite. She would try to maneuver her body so she became pregnant. Gemara says, is that really? And Gemara says, is it really the case when it comes to a marriage? Are we really concerned that she's going to be pregnant? But didn't we learn in our Mishnah, didn't we learn in the Brisa, Batanya Basko and Shanisas Israel? Let's say there's a daughter of a Kohen who marries an Israelite, Mace, and then he died. Toveles, well, tell us Truma. She can immediately immerse and eat the Truma. We don't have to be concerned she's pregnant. That night she can eat the Truma. So Amar Rav Chisda, and Rav Chisda said, Toveles Volchelas ad Arbaim. No, it means she can only eat the Truma up until 40 days. Diloma Abra, because if she's not pregnant, Aloma Abra, she wasn't pregnant for those 40 days. That's why she can eat the Truma. Vime Abra, and if she got pregnant up until 40 days, ad Arbaim, Maya Ba'amahi. The first 40 days, the fetus is not considered to be alive. It's just water. And so therefore she could eat the Truma. This is the source for the idea that Judaism does not believe that life begins at conception. Because the first 40 days, she could eat from the Truma. Abaye says, what about the concluding clause? Hukar ubra b'me'ah. If she ate, if the fetus is then recognizable, we say retroactively, all the truma that she ate, this goes back to Gray's question, retroactively, all the truma that she ate, she has to pay back plus 1/5. The Gemara says, no, ad arbaim, only up until the 40 days. Only up until the 40 days that she has to pay it back. All right, you know what? We're going to have to stop here. We'll stop here because, first of all, if anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to address